do TURARQ.
Estava aqui.
O Douglas.
Como é que ele chama?
Douglas
Douglas quê?
Cardoso. Evento de pôr vídeos no meio dos PowerPoints e não sabia se estava a funcionar. Mas está.
Então, muito bom dia a todos e a todos. Penso que o professor irá traduzir.
Good morning, everyone.
Dar-vos as boas-vindas, na qualidade, naturalmente, de Presidente da Câmara Municipal de Mação, a mais este seminário Apheleia. Tá?
The mayor greets all of you on behalf of Mação for this new seminar of Apheleia this year.
E deixem-me que, um bocadinho fora, eventualmente, de contexto, ou talvez não, aproveitar para deixar uma palavra muito especial ao professor Nuno Madeira, do Politécnico de Tomar, que muitos de vocês conhecem, ou irão conhecer, e que é também um amigo desta terra, e queria deixar aqui muito bem vincada, além da estima pessoal, também a excelência do trabalho que tem desenvolvido no Instituto Politécnico de Tomar, e que, aliás, ainda na semana passada, eu e o professor Oosterbeek e mais algumas pessoas falávamos precisamente sobre esse assunto.
Special thanks to Professor Nuno Madeira, the Vice President of the Polytechnic Institute, that is here on my side, for all the work and also the friendship to Mação, but all the work that he has been developed in the Polytechnic Institute of Tomar.
Dizer-vos que é com muito gosto que a Câmara Municipal de Mação se associa a este seminário, que já está na 9ª edição e que seguramente tem produzido muitas e variadas reflexões extraordinariamente importantes.
It's with pleasure that the municipality associates itself to this seminar, which is now in its 9th edition, having produced relevant knowledge in the past.
Razão pela qual é hoje reconhecida também pela Unesco, através da associação que foi criada e que teve na gênese estes seminários.
And which is now this work has been recognized by UNESCO, and namely through the network that has been created based on them.
Portanto, este é mais um bom exemplo, e não me canso de o referir, do trabalho que é desenvolvido no nosso Museu de Arte Pré-Histórica Sagrado do Val do Tejo, através da excelência da sua equipa e das parcerias que temos desenvolvido ao longo destes anos.
This is one more initiative of the project of the museum and its team all through the years.
E, portanto, espero que os objetivos que estão traçados para este seminário sejam amplamente atingidos. Serão dias intensos de trabalho, mas, enfim, pela cara dos jovens que estão à minha frente, seguramente terão enormes capacidades para aguentarem aquilo que aqui vão aprender e vão também experienciar.
So it will be 10 very intense days, but looking at the young faces in front of me, I think you have the energy to cope with that.
A todos vocês, continuação de um bom dia, um bom seminário, e reitero a satisfação, em nome da Câmara Municipal de Mação, por receber tão ilustres oradores, na certeza que, uma vez mais, Mação ficará agradecido com este seminário. Muito obrigado.
So once again, thank you very much for this seminar. Now, Professor Nuno Madeira, Vice President of the Polytechnic Institute.
Olá, bom dia. Good morning, everyone. I begin by greeting the mayor, my close friend Vasco Estrela, and in his person allow me to greet everyone in the room. Apheleia 2023 started 10 years ago. Is, I think, the 9th edition. I want to congratulate all of you, and for this, in particular, Luiz Oosterbeek and his team. We at Polytechnic Institute of Tomar are very proud to have you on board. Also, I want to congratulate all the researchers in the room, in particular the IPT, Polytechnic Institute of Tomar researchers, namely Sara Garces, Hugo Gomes, Herminia Sol, I hope I don't forget anyone, Herminia Sol, Manuela Silva, Inês Câmara, Luís Santos, Lohan Carron, Ana do Carmo, Eduardo Ferraz, Douglas Cardoso, Pierre Luigi Rosina, João Pedro, and Júlio Silva. Proud of you. I read the program, and we have here transdisciplinary researchers from several areas, and I'm sure the seminar will be a success. I'm very sorry that because I cannot attend all the seminar, but for sure I will read all the proceedings. Again, Apheleia 2023. Adaptation and transformation is the motto of this seminar. Community-based practices. Understand better the community-based projects from prehistory to the present. This reminds me the trivium, where the logic is the art of thinking, grammar is the art of inventing symbols and combining them, and rhetoric is the art of communication and adapting language to the circumstances. This leads to the motto of this seminar, the adaptation and transformation of community-based practices. I wish you a good information and research sharing and a good work for everyone.
Thank you, Nuno. Now, Professor Robert Sala from the University of Tarragona.
Thank you very much, Luis. I have been invited to give you some words of welcoming here in Massau in the name of our Erasmus Mundus Consortium, Quaternary and Prehistory. Thank you to all of you for coming here to Massau to attend Apheleia, and also for sure thanks to Luis and all his team for organizing that and inviting us to come to Massau once again. Thank you very much.
And Professor Robert Belot from the University of Saint-Étienne.
Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Greetings to all. It's a pleasure to be here again in the Apheleia seminar. And it's also a pleasure to meet again my students of the Erasmus Mundus John Master Degree Declan Plus and the other students of the other Master Erasmus Mundus. And I think it's a kind of event to connect the two masters. And for the mayor of this city, I have to underline that it's very important to have students that who come from the whole world, in fact. Indonesia, Kenya, Liban, and so on. Armenia, Senegal, Algeria, and so on. So it's very important for me. And it is in Massau, not elsewhere. And it's therefore I want to congratulate Luiz Oosterbeek and the scientific team and the administrative team. They made a wonderful work. Okay, I think it's the fourth time I'm here, and always I have to say how I am satisfied to what is doing. But it is also a very good example of what cultural heritage could play in the dynamization of a low density demographic area. You see? So here it's a leçon de choses. Une leçon de choses. I don't know the word in English. A leçon de choses. It's not only teachers and students, but it's also a reality that we can touch directly. See? So I think it's a kind of miracle, if I can say. And so I congratulate, of course, Luiz Oosterbeek, IPT in general, but especially also the political actors. Okay, and I think it's very important to connect the academic world and the the local collectivities. It is very important, and I think for us it's a lesson, a kind of lesson. See? And I think we can export the model elsewhere. You see, in Kenya, for example, I see. So, congratulations and thank you for inviting us. And I wish a good seminar to all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Robert. It is true that what Robert Belot just said, but it's also true that I'm very bad at Sara.
Sabe isso?
Não percebo nada disto. Ali em cima onde? Neste? Aqui? Não, mas não acontece nada.
Não é o anjo da guarda, mas é o Sara
Não
da
percebo
guarda.
nada disto. Ok. No, one thing that Robert... Não consigo... It's different what is there. It's the third time this morning that I collapsed the computer. It's the first day, it's the third time. Now, Robert said something which is important. We will be talking and working on community-based practices. And the project of myself is exactly that. The beginning of this process, a little bit over 20 years ago, started based on an interaction between the Polytechnic and the municipality, but not only that. The moment we started agreeing on a perspective to create a research center here and to renew the museum, we also said we must discuss with the population. And I always stress this is very important. The agreement between Tomar and Marcel was, in a sense, easy. But then there were, this was made already in 2000, but then it took us until 2002 to take more than 1 year talking to people in Marcel. We had a plan, we discussed with people the options, including the difficult option of having an exhibition in the museum about prehistory and not about their traditional ethnographic collections, which now are hosted in other places. And so I think the secret is this: without the local political leaders who represent the community, without higher education, and without a permanent interaction with the population, this cannot be done, either here or anywhere else. And actually, Robert knows, Robert Sala in this case, that there were other experiences, and for us that started here, Totavel was very important. Because Totavel is different, of course, from here, but it is, again, a center created around prehistoric sites, around prehistoric research, but then being able to act in terms of local development, of creating opportunities of jobs and so on for people, and that's it. I'm very emotionally impacted by the time that is taking Sara and Vitor to solve the problem. I'm always thrilled when the other people can't do it, because it means the units. Okay. All right. So, just one finger. One important thing for these 10 days. It will be very intensive. It's the program itself, it's not very heavy, because we will have lectures in the morning and we will have workshops which are lighter in the afternoons. However, if you really want to benefit from the seminar, you have to take advantage of all the breaks. You will have here people coming from many different countries with many different perspectives, from the 2 master programs, but also the Club of Rome, also people from UNESCO, and you should benefit in the breaks, in the evening, drinking a beer, to talk with them. Okay, they will be there. They are all nice people. They will like that. And in the end, all of you are already preparing an essay. This essay, as I already explained to some, will be read not only by me, but at least by one or two more of my colleagues, according to the themes, as a sort of peer review. And then, if accepted, they will be published. These are examples of publications we did before. The one on the left was done by DCLAM students on intangibility. The right one included several students also, but it's a big book on sustainability science. This is another volume that is out on tangibility, that has the collaboration of students and lecturers from the two masters and other people, of course. This is a volume that will be given to you next week. It's the proceedings of the European Humanities Conference, edited with UNESCO. And soon, these are 3 books coming in the next months. It was impossible technically to have them for this week, but they will come out until April for sure. And of course, I expect that there will be a volume also on this topic of adaptation, transformation, and community-based practices. So, muito baixo. Se quiserem ir embora. Não, é só porque não estou a expulsar. No, I'm just saying if you want to go. Nuno, vais ficar mais? Vais ficar um bocadinho? Ok. Não, eu tenho aqui. Eu falo daqui. So, a brief introduction that I will try to do fast on the topic of our discussions. These seminars of Apheleia are not teaching courses in the traditional sense of the word. We are in a process of doing research on a certain number of themes. We have done it in the past, and you can check the publications of past events. And we try to bring scholars and research students from different areas to think of around questions. The question this year is this: how continuity and change operates across human societies, and how what is a normal daily mechanism that we all have, which is to adapt to whatever is around us. We are used to have some kind of food. Some of you move to a different country, you have to adapt. But when you simply adapt, the logic of adaptation is the logic of trying to stay living the way you are used to live, right? So you adapt, but because it may cause you a bit of discomfort, but in the end, you are okay because you can keep on living basically as you want, as you are used to. This is what is in the brain. For example, think of how people discuss today issues of sustainability and energy and so on. The discourse is very interesting. The discourse is not, the dominant discourse, is not about changing profoundly the ways of being and living. It is about changing the energy matrix so that we can keep on living as we do. So think of what was the debate around the pandemic. On the surface, you would say, some people would say, you are first to protect lives. Others were saying, you are first to protect the economy. But in the end, the dominant all across was, we have to keep the pandemic under control so that we can keep on living our lives as usual. The funny thing is that just before the pandemic, everyone in the planet was complaining about their lives. And then suddenly all they wanted was to go back to their lives. This is how, so this is the normal approach. But we know that sometimes it's not necessarily a plan. It's actually not normally a plan. But in the end, people are living in a completely different way. This is when archaeologists, historians say it's a new culture. Sometimes it's a new civilization. And the question is, how and why does this occur? And how can we identify drivers of that change? So what triggers going from a logic of adaptation into a logic of transformation, of being something else, becoming something else? There are a certain number of concepts. I want to go in detail in this, but just to put in your brains, these are words that we will be hearing these days. They are not interpreted by all of us the same way, but they are keywords whenever we discuss these issues. The relation between landscape and territory, that most of you know that I use these words, but not everyone in the same way, but we in Apheleia, we use these words also in the sense of territory being what we can describe in terms of natural sciences, and landscape what we perceive in cultural terms. And so these are two important concepts. We will be talking about what it means to have a leading role for humanities in society. What are humanities? UNESCO approved a program, a new program called Bridges. You will be hearing about it. And it says Bridges is a humanities-led driven project. What does it mean? We will talk again, although this was the topic of a past seminar, on social cultural matrix. We could say the trust networks in a society. How do you make decisions, important decisions in your lives? You don't make them based on simply going to the book and taking the administrative section that refers to that. You need a medical doctor, particularly if you are more concerned. You will look for advice. Some people will say that hospital is better than the other or whatever. But how does this work? Particularly in a society as ours that moved from a 3-generation society that we had since prehistory into a society with 5, 6 generations living together, aging, and so on. How does trust work in that? We worked in the past on the relations between education, training, and communication. That are words that our society has divided. There's someone here in the room, you are, from communication, right? And we separate these things, but in fact, they are together in the mechanisms of cultural transmission and transformation. Adaptation, transformation, the relevance of materialities. This is a very strong insistence of Apheleia, because we live now in a world where the keywords are narrative, intangible. Basically, I could say anything that doesn't require from those who lead to pay us better salaries. So it's very nice to talk about intangible, because you can say you don't get a better salary, but you get a nice discourse. We will be talking about that as well. And Robert Belot already mentioned the role of heritage. This is important. This is particularly important because most of you can't think like this, because I was going to say, think of what you used to hear last century, but you were not born. So, or you were too small. But when we used to talk about heritage in the end of the 20th century, everyone would think about history, right? Heritage was the remains of the historical past, and the history was perceived as the result of a contribution of the academics into building an understanding of the past. So the filter that everyone in society, or everyone, most people, would use to approach the past was the academics, historians above all. And today, it's no longer that. When you talk about heritage, you talk about identity, and you talk about narrative. You talk about the intangible. And this is a tremendous change. You also talk about economics, of course, profit, and so on. We will be discussing this as well. What is the relevance, for example, of a narrative-based, identitarian-based heritage for fostering war or peace? How do you use these things? We will be talking again a little bit about problems and dilemmas, although this was a topic of the past. What are the invariants in a society so that a sense of community feeling keeps on, although changing the way of life? So how do we combine flexibility without losing identity, and the relation between individuals and communities? And actually, this whole discussion about transformation is a long debate. It's an over 2,000 years debate, and to a large extent, it was a debate about what you see in this slide very briefly. What is, in a process like this, the role of individuals and of leaders, and the role of communities? It's a huge debate. Where was the trigger, for example, of the French Revolution? Some would say the ideals of the Republicans, the ideals that they lost when they lost their heads, basically, because that's what happened. Who is the face of the French Revolution? Is it Robespierre and Danton, or is it Napoleon? By the way, the Emperor Napoleon. So these are processes that have been discussed. You have some authors here, and always basically thinking how should we, those who look at these issues, intervene? Because if you think it is about leaders, first of all, you will organize ways to have an elite leading the process. If you think it is basically a serendipity mechanism, then you will look at community-based practices. So the Renaissance, for example, for those who know more about European history, the Renaissance created the image of the Dark Ages, of the Middle Ages, as being a lousy moment to live. Actually, it was much better for most people than the Renaissance itself. Because if you think of modernity is wars among republics all the time, people killing each other all the time. Middle Ages was fine. They had landlords, especially the last part of the Middle Ages, if you put aside the plague. Because there was a certain comfort, which is characteristic of this kind of more authoritarian periods, where you may dislike some things, but you don't get surprises. You know very well that tomorrow Sarah will continue solving the problems of the computer. Revolutions it's a very disturbing moment, because Sarah goes away and she says, no, I want to do rock and roll. And I say, okay, so who takes care of the computer? So this discussion is, again, today a central one. And I won't comment all these slides because it's already advanced in time. But I would recommend, I have selected these titles, I would recommend for you to read these things. If you go to the classics, it's very interesting. Because if you go to the Iliad or the Odyssey, for example, at the surface, you could say it is about the heroes, it's about the leaders. But it's not. Because in fact, what these classical books say is that despite the will of the leaders, something else is happening. Of course, the explanation is the gods. But the gods are explained in a way that we never understand what they want. They are capricious. They decide things randomly because that's the mechanism of a society. So there is an understanding underneath which is interesting to go through. And there is a sort of consolidation for over 100 years now in the field of human sciences, which again has on one hand those authors that privilege the analysis of the structural structure of society and have an approach to understanding society which is closer, if you want, to natural sciences in terms of declining the general rules of functioning from which you can predict what will be human behavior, and those that stress primarily the will of individuals. And it's always there is always a big tension, and sometimes the top group prevails, and this is largely the second half of the 20th century, and sometimes, like today, the bottom group prevails. Sometimes we look into the past more with the eyes of an historian, and sometimes society looks in the past more with the eyes of an anthropologist. Of course, there are no historians who are not anthropologists and vice versa, but it is important where you put the accent, and that's what we will be trying to discuss these 10 days. I would say, some of you already know this, that if in history and anthropology we reconstruct the pasts with a certain number of variables, and we are capable of building a coherent portrait of the past, knowing that, particularly in archaeology, the will of individuals escapes us completely. We have no idea. It's impossible to reach that. But still we can understand, at least we think we can understand those past societies, probably the same grid of reading which looks at which are the available resources in a given place. Then which are the techniques that the society has to use those resources, including other humans. Then how the logistics, what in archaeology we call raw material economics, how the logistics of bridging the needs and the resources is designed. And finally, who has the access to that knowledge and to those logistical networks. This is basically, if you think, you read books about the Ming civilization, or even when there are written texts, because the written texts give you only a small portrait of the past that most people couldn't read and write. So when you think about the history of those pasts, Middle Ages and so on, the Mayas, it's basically this. Sometimes you have information and you will say a few things about Vercingetorix or things, but this is largely, everyone knows, a portrait characterized by those who could write. So you cannot really trust completely. It's a source of information, but it's not, you cannot base your interpretation of the past on that. You base on this. Resources, techniques, logistics, and what you can understand about the social structure. And maybe if we use this to our society today, we could have a better governance. Because if it works to the past, it should also work to the present and in the future. Because we are not that different. So this is basically what we will be discussing with different perspectives. I gave you mine, others will have other ideas. In my view, there is a high degree of predictability in human behavior. It is not deterministic, but we can anticipate. We could anticipate for a long time that there would be a war in Europe. We could not anticipate it would start last year. And we couldn't anticipate that some of the actors would be so stupid to do it in this way. But that it was going in that direction, many people were saying that. Many people in human sciences for a long time. And that's it. So I leave you with our emperor and this beautiful image of republic and democracy, because this is what people think when they say, oh, I'm a republic and a democrat. I like the French Revolution. Here you have it. So thank you very much. And now I'll check who is the next one. I think it's Manuela. No, it's Silva.
Revolution, between the French Revolution and the emergency of the First Empire. It's more complex, of course. Very. And because in the background you can see the Pope. Yeah. So it's Napoleon. It's very discussing thematic. You see, it's not easy. I would like to for the students, they have to pay attention between the two events, because for Napoleon has been a traitor of the revolution, but also a continuator of the revolution. So it's a dialectical approach, in fact.
No, I presented this as a joke.
Yes.
The joke is that exactly what Robert said. Napoleon, in a sense, traitor. But it was the Napoleon army, the French army with Napoleon, that spread the ideals of the revolution everywhere.
Yes. Yes.
So history is always very complex. It's always very contradictory.
But the idea of revolution, but the idea of the nationalism also. It is very important. And I would, tomorrow, I will speak about the construction of the European community. And what is very strange is that if you go to Brussels to visit the House of European History, which is very incredible that the story begins by the French Revolution. So it's a paradoxical point of view, you see. So why? And it is the thematic I would like to develop tomorrow. Sorry. So very interesting. Why the chronological of the birth of the United Europe begins by the French Revolution. So thank you.
Good morning. Today we're going to present the TURARQ project. Last year in Apheleia we had the chance to, for the first time, to present what TURARQ project was and what the main goals of this project that involves archaeology and tourism was all about. So we were in the beginning of this project, and we were literally building our structure of work, and we already had some interesting goals to speak about and to have a proper discussion about what would be the main or the best way to work on such a complicated theme, I think, mixing tourism these days and with such a difficult theme to also sometimes to understand or to communicate as archaeology. And today we actually tried to do a presentation where we basically will give us a situation point on the project and on the things that we have been working on the last year, and also we would like to hear some of your opinions in the end. Firstly, what is TURARQ project? TURARQ, it's a project that aims to contribute to the development of the region that we are, the Middle Tagus region, as a pilot case, in the sense that is we are working firstly in a smaller area that actually the Middle Tagus is considered to be, and we are focusing in 5 municipality areas. Mação municipality, where we are standing today, Tomar, Abrantes, Constância, and Vila Nova da Barquinha. This grey area that you see on the map that has a logic of territory, of cohesion, of low density, issues to approach, and the access of both the Tagus River and communication ways. And what is TURARQ? TURARQ works on 2 main pillars: accessibility to cultural and territorial heritage, obviously aligning tourism with conservation, with preservation, with sustainability, with archaeology and environmental questions, and supported with the new technology, or how new technology and digital resources can help to actually enhance the archaeological tourism in a region like this one in the middle of Portugal. It's a challenge mainly because it's an area that has a lot of, for example, communication and transportation issues, but at the same time there are a lot of starting points that we start working with. For example, archaeological heritage, it's more than 19% of the heritage of this region. So it's actually a big potential to work, and it has never been approached properly. Our team is very multidisciplinary. We are working with each one of us, the core team. Obviously, we have a coordinator council, a scientific commission, with a lot of experts in different fields, and the main researchers, some of the faces you already know, and directed by Professor Oosterbeek. And we started by presenting a core program on 7 different axes or work packages, as we speak. We thought about everything that we really have to approach if we want to work in a project that will align archaeology, tourism, sustainability, and all these disciplines. Actually, if we want to work with tourism sector, we would have to work with the management of projects in different fields. We would have to work with inventories of resources. We would have to work with science and research. We would have to work with education and training, with tourism and community development, preservation of the sites, and good practices of how to do it, because it's a very fragile theme, I think, how to preserve a site. And because there's a lot of different diversity of archaeological sites and heritage sites in this area, some of them are considered extremely fragile. For example, the ones that have prehistoric art. And it's always very difficult to try to balance showing or make visitations to a prehistoric art, for example, and at the same time protecting it. Because it's not a site that it's not a museum or a closed door site. It's in the open air. Sometimes it's really easy to reach or to approach, and at the same time it's almost one of the big issues to try to think how can we protect something that is there, you know, that anybody can actually be there. And obviously communication and marketing of how can we communicate not only this project but all the other working packages that we are trying to work. This is a project obviously that needs a lot of partners, of research centers, of colleagues from other disciplines, and in this project we are trying not to only work with science or researchers, but we always take into account not only the municipalities, because they are the main partners and the main colleagues, because they are in the terrain, they are in the field, but also with the archaeological authorities, with research centers that all the researchers from the team belong to, with other projects, other fellow projects that are in the same institutions and they have more or less the same goals or are working towards the same goals as us. We are always also working with companies, tourism companies and other kind of companies, training companies, for example, of the Middle Tagus, like Nersa and Médio Tejo, and obviously with a network of training, of professional training of this territory that already gives a lot of training to different fields, but we can always partner up with them. What is the starting point? Tourism and sustainability. Since a long time, nature-based tourism is considered one of the fastest growing industries worldwide. So tourism, as we all know, it's one of the main industries or one of the main economic and social development factors that will happen in the world, is happening now and it will happen in the future. So tourism can actually be think as a strategic, as economic strategic for developing regions. And how can we do this using archaeology and environment, for example? This was our starting point. So there's a lot of good impacts and also bad impacts that we know that tourism has, but I think that if we have it both in our minds since the beginning, we can actually start approaching a project like this in a better way. If we already have what are the problems involved, we can work towards working on the problems not as a problem, but how can we actually make a less impact on this. Main points that we were thinking since the beginning: sustainability development of making these kind of communities more inclusive, safer, more secure, more resilient. Most of the sustainability principles that are defended today, we also want to make sure that we are accomplishing, and obviously make a very good planned tourism program. That's one of the starting points. As I said before, this region is very rich in archaeological sites and especially very diverse. We have all the chronologies, historical and prehistorical chronologies, and many different sites, since prehistoric art until industrial archaeology, for example. So there's a lot of different points to think about. And the World Tourism Organization also give us a lot of pinpoints to make sure that these kind of programs will be well developed, taking into account the impacts, not only the economic and social point of view, but also from the environmental point of view. And the pinpoints that actually already give us like a guideline to work has to do with economic viability, local prosperity, local control, the quality of employment that we can actually create with these kind of programs, social equality, visitor satisfaction, which is also important, because, and also to train this visitor how to behave in different type of sites, community well-being, cultural enrichment, physical integrity, biological diversity, and obviously environmental purity. So if we have in mind, this was our starting point, having in mind all these points from the beginning, and having in mind what is good terms in tourism these days and what can be a bad term in tourism, we actually can start working towards a program that will not have a negative impact on the region, but on the contrary, we want it to be the best impact as we can.
So briefly, now we will present you some of the goals as results that we get after 1 year of having this strategy. So we present them in the kind of the boxes. So in the first, the management package, since the beginning we start to apply for funding. This project was for human resources, so We are paid by this TURARQ project, but we need funding for implement all these initiatives that we want, working with the communities, giving training to the companies. So everything that we need money. So we start since the beginning to catch some opportunities to find money. And of course, I give to this room, if you have an idea of funding that could be applied for this kind of strategy, we are welcome to your ideas, and we can make partnerships and collaborations. We have already some that works, in fact, and but this is ongoing work. We don't finish when we got the first budget. We need to stay all the time searching for new kind of fundings. Of course, with our partnerships for the tourism of Portugal, with the tourism of Central Portugal Agency and others, we already have some ideas where to catch these fundings to apply for our projects. Sorry. And in this context, we working with prehistory since the beginning. We start to develop this idea of creating a festival of prehistory and traditional knowledge. Of course, to build a festival, to build a 3-4 days festival, we also need budget, but we are still ongoing. We have already a cooperation with Viclam students of last year that help us to create this management plan to apply for a funding. So we hope in the next year we already got these budgets and will be implemented here in Mação. Of course, we will invite all the MPK, all the masters to come to this festival. That the focus will be prehistory, archaeology, and traditional knowledge. Starting in the inventory, that was in fact the basis where we start. We need to know how many sites, how many archaeological sites, how many these sites were classified, they were already protected. So we start to invent the inventory of every resources that we have in these 5 municipalities. The important one for us, of course, was to join all the knowledge that we have in archaeological that was spread in the national direction, the local municipalities, also in the scientific publications. So the first effort that we make was keeping all this information in a proper database. In general, we got, for example, just for archaeological sites, more than 500 sites. Imagine what is working with 500 sites. That is not, they are not so easy to understand. We are talking about Paleolithic sites, stones in the floor. We are talking about Roman evidences that sometimes is just a wall or a ruin. So we need to make all these inventory, but also the evaluation. So in this point, we start to work directly with the municipalities that they know very well their heritage, and they could help us easily to give an evaluation from these sites. Of course, we create a shadow relating with the scientific importance, if they have, for example, educative or pedagogical contents, if they have already touristic attractions, if they are accessible or not, and if in the proximities, that is also sometimes a problem, if they are the resources for the tourists, restaurants, bathrooms, hotels, those things that sometimes when we think about tourism, we don't connect everything. We want to visit a beautiful archaeological site, but it's in the middle of the Ocreza Valley, so you spend 1 day walking, you don't have these infrastructures, so maybe it will not be a good experience. So we create this huge database with all these information, of course related with municipalities that know. The idea is, of course, using also the not just the archaeological heritage, but connecting these archaeological sites with the landscape and what we have in the landscape. Beautiful geosites, beautiful geological implements. Of course, the biodiversity that exists in this area, sometimes specific, particular, but in general, this landscape is particular because I'm geologist, we are in a confluence of different lithologies, and of course biodiversity adapt to this diversity. So we have also in this small area, these 5 municipalities of Middle Tejo, we have a huge diversity in terms of natural heritage. And these database have also all the resources, the hotels, the restaurants, the companies that work here. So it was I would say, a complete. We try to make a complete database, and after we'll put that in a GIS system to manage all this information.
Yeah, and this is a much easier way. I mean, it gives us a lot of work collecting the data, but it's a much easier way than how, for example, to create itineraries of either themes, Paleolithic itinerary, or a Roman age sites itineraries, or a mixture, or a thematic complemented with such features of environment. But we already have everything. We can actually make different itineraries, not only on a theme, but taking into account different publics. For example, probably I will make a completely different itinerary for youth, for a young group of people, than for a senior group of people. I would have to take into account different kind of facilities for a certain type of a group of tourists than for another ones that prefer adventure tourism, for example. So collecting the data actually is probably what takes us longer, and to actually understand from the point of view of the municipalities what is important for them. For example, an archaeological site is very important for me, but from the touristic point of view, it's not. It can be important from the scientific point of view, but not from the tourist point of view. So we can actually have to make a different balance, having this all data, and actually making the local authorities to actually make these decisions as well, because they know what in Tomar city people like to go to this middle-aged site, but they don't care about that Paleolithic site that it's actually very important for you guys, but not from the touristic point of view. So collecting data, it's hard work and takes us a lot of time, but then the possibilities to work this amount of data actually give us much more possibilities, creating very good products in an easy way.
Of course, the axis of the science, we are researchers, so since the beginning we make a huge effort also to disseminate all these scientific and all this knowledge that we are collecting. So we start to went to different kind of congresses. We went to touristic archaeological congresses in the north of Portugal. Now we are making a huge effort to promote all these work that we done in last year, and we are preparing to the next year. We have already some calls, so some of you could also apply to come to these sessions to present some of your works.
And if anybody is interested in participating, we have an open call for the Archaeological Tourism in Portugal Congress for our session, so go ahead and participate.
And
That's what they do all the time. And the Erasmus students, that's all about tourism.
Exactly.
Yeah, scientific tourism. It's really good. And we in the Sara tell also in the beginning that we make, for us is very important, the training, the education and the training. And when we speak about training, we speak about training everyone, not specific for professors, not specific for tourism agents. So we create, with the collaboration with NERSAN, this kind of formation with different models. We don't we'll particularize here the thematics that we'll show, but of course there will be landscape interpretation, how to build the itinerary, how to use the resources that already exist, and we will also create kind of apps and sites that will help the not expert in building itineraries to use them easily. I forget to tell that all these data that we are collecting will be in an open science way. So when will be very work, there will be disponible for everyone that want to to assess and create their own itineraries. So we just bring an example what we already spread for this in particular for the companies that have the tourism agencies and all these interested in creating itineraries, and we already start to promote this training with specific goals. Of course, in the next 3-4 months, we'll have training for professors using the educative resources of the territory. We'll have training with specific apps to connect communities also in this process of reinforce the identity of the territory. And exactly, I don't know if in the program will be any specific communication about this app, but it was an app that was developed here in Macau with the benefits and profits. That is also a partner of our project. And the idea of using this app, some of you are laughing because some of you were already examples of using this app for the first time. And the idea is using this app first in this territory, but after could be in a national level to engage people to identify their own heritage. So people could use this app to identify the archaeological heritage that they have nearby their houses, the natural one that is very difficult. For example, the municipalities don't have till today this inventory of the geological sites, of the biological implements. Some whole trees, for example, are in the inventory, but in general, the natural heritage is not compiled. Is this word? So this app will help also the scientists and the management of the territories to know much more the heritage that people know and don't arrive for the national things. And we are also creating, working with the prehistory, and we have a long past of more than 15 years working in prehistory. We create this experimental park here in Macau. We are waiting for the video. That in fact was built with a funding, with a POIS funding, a national funding, but was built with the community, using the senior university, the club seniors, using the schools that develop activities, using the traditional knowledge, of course, with the basis of the prehistory traditions and way of doing. Pedro is here, that is our handman that usually try to experiment and put on physical things the scientific proposals. And the park, we will have an activity on tomorrow. We'll visit the park, and the idea is to create a living park, so people could participate in the construction, could participate in the activities developing, and we have a huge plan of activities that start with creating a stone tool to developing rock art. So making cheese, so all these activities that start in prehistory, but some of them still being done these days. And the idea is using the park to connect, in fact, the reality of Macau, using, for example, the promotion of the local products that are produced, and the park could be a way of selling and promoting all these knowledge.
Sorry, a little time for the video to start. It's just a small footage that was done last year in one of our weekend activities of building. And this is probably one of the best examples that we have that involves tourism and community development. The park was built and was thought to be built with the community. Not the community as anybody can come and build, but actually there was a very specific program to involve little kids and teenagers and grown-ups and senior population into every aspect of the construction of the park. So involving the community sometimes actually is this. It's thinking that how can we actually put little kids with senior population creating a project that is the building of a prehistoric park. And actually it has a lot to do how can people share their knowledge. so this is very complemented with traditional knowledge, not only the prehistoric knowledge of how to do things from a prehistoric way, but it was actually more of a exchange of experience and knowledge, experience than other thing. The result can be transformed in a very good touristic site that can be used in different ways, only visitations, for activities, to actually keep the construction of different things and to understand different things, or to work with Manuela working with local fauna. Continue.
Yeah, in this way, we also make an effort to implement innovation and technologies in the way of managing all these heritage. So we are not inventing the wheel. So the territory already have some apps and some infrastructures that works, in fact, but they need maintenance. They need to be improved. Some of the partners with the pandemic, for example, they close the doors, they disappear. So we are creating this network between the tourism of Central Portugal and also the NERSA that create this Viver o Tejo app that in fact is in function and is very useful. I have already a huge network of partners. So the idea is between us give a new input to these apps and put them working properly. The idea is that each of you, for example, could install the app. They are free, and could create your own itinerary in the region. I want to spend 4 days, and it will give you suggestions of sites to visit, places to eat, places to sleep, where you could buy handicraft. So the app will be ongoing with all the resources that exist in this territory. Preservation, of course, we have a huge effort in the preservation of our sites. They are, as Sara explained, they are very, very sensitive. Some of the sites we cannot put 20 people per day, for example. They will be destroyed very, very, very easy. So we also assimilate these days with some specific ephemerides. For example, the rock art, we make the visits, guided visits to these sites. So it's a way of educating, but also promoting the sites without creating a mess in the sites.
Yeah, preservation doesn't only means how can we make a physical impact on the site to preserve it. Actually, how can we keep this site without being damaged? And either, for example, for rock art researchers normally say, well, if you want to keep a site of rock art, don't touch it, don't see it, don't put people there. Well, it's true, but we can't do that, actually. So I think the best way to preserve a site is actually to teach people, train people, take people there, explain things well, explain why it's important the site to be preserved, and explain people how to behave and how they can actually help to preserve the sites. Not hiding or not showing. That I don't think that is a good path. So making special days, making visitations, making technical visitations with people actually helps people to understand much better why is that site so important, and they actually make themselves as agents of protecting their own heritage, because that's in the end that's what it is.
Yeah, in fact, the idea is to in growing the identity. People feel that is their heritage. That is here. And of course, we have also opportunity to have three scholarships related with communication that help us for creating all the social media of TURARQ. Of course, we could make a lot of things, but if we don't communicate to the world, it will be like here between us, and we create these social media networks, Instagram, Facebook, where we could in fact promote all these activities, and also our partners' activities that could be spread. We are finishing, yeah. We also have the opportunity to went to Italy to the Mediterranean fair that we promote also the TURARQ and also the territory of Middle Tagus. And that's all. Thank you. These are some of examples of our beautiful heritage.
And go visit archaeological sites in Middle Tagus.
We are a little bit too late, but we have 5 minutes for any questions, observations, or you wish to make. Anyone else? No? Everyone wants a coffee? In that case, thank you very much.
Obrigada.
Thank you, and good morning. So today I will talk about transformational education for sustainable tourism in the part of targeting preteens. Why to use transformational pedagogy? According to Ferren, transformative pedagogy argues for more systematic links to be developed between knowledge learned school and knowledge learned by interacting the context of wider society, and for school and society living to be informed by moral ethical stance. It links teaching and learning with living. Basing ourselves in Lopes and Holland, one can say that travel as a transformative pedagogy empowers students to critically examine beliefs, values, and knowledge with the objective of developing new epistemologies, center multiple forms of knowing, and develop a sense of critical awareness. Empowerment through travel as an educational strategy is understood as aiming to develop and enhance young adolescents' transversal competences of learning, allowing them to build resources in their own environment and turn capacities, knowledge and skills into competences for self-empowerment. And why targeting preteens? Mainly because of cognitive and intellectual reasons. Early adolescents have an increased ability to learn and apply skills. The early adolescent years mark the beginning of abstract thinking. Young adolescents learn to extend their way of thinking beyond their personal experience and knowledge and start to view the world outside of an absolute black versus white or right versus wrong perspective. Interpretive ability develops, as does the ability to recognize cause and effect sequences. This new ability helps them to plan for their future and consider how their choices will affect that future. Another new skill in this is metacognition, thinking about thinking. They become able to answer who, what, where, and when questions, but still may have problems with the why question. This new skill helps adolescents think how they can learn best and find ways to improve how they absorb new information. Furthermore, they have an enhanced learning capacity. New synapses or gaps between nerve cells through which impulses are transmitted make the adolescent brain a learning machine that can absorb facts, ideas, and skills. This shows that in the early years of the adolescence, that identity formation happens. Such means that it is in this period of life that individuals' identity can be more easily molded. And so, it is then core at this stage to expose young teenagers to sustainable tourism development values and goals through examples. Because, as Stelzer et al. Say, the more one patterns of differential association are balanced towards exposure to pro-social, positive behavior and attitudes, the greater the probability that one will have to engage in positive behaviors. While major gains in cognitive understanding are unlikely in the short time period of most school field trips, brief experiences can certainly evoke strong emotional responses. This means that effective outcomes such as motivation or interest increase the curiosity about some theme, or improved attitudes towards a topic are more likely to occur. We undertook a week-long trip with the students to Corfu in Greece. The idea of this trip was to provoke a disruptive travel episode with otherness similar to the disorienting dilemma of Mesero, for which a person, mind as a habit, precipitates reflexive reformulations to become more justifiable via encounters. According to we, students were transformed through the experience of reflecting as they told stories of practice. So he concludes that the power of critical reflection in tourism education cannot be underestimated, since it contributes to the co-creation of values, shared learning, and co-production of future actions. By involving pre-adolescent students in sustainable tourism educational activities and giving them power not only to participate in the design of sustainable tourism educational trips, but also by empowering them to control the outcomes, one will be providing them opportunities to learn about tourism sustainability through practice and instill in them values that will probably endure through life. According to Serafin and Green, it is important to create activities that enable children to get other people to listen to their ideas, build things or put things together, exploring and discover new things, or creating something they are proud of. In the words of Serafin, children could potentially play a role in the sustainability of tourism if they are empowered to do it so. So this model of transformational learning tips with the first phase when planning the trip by students and by teachers, then the concrete trip experience where everyone having the learning experience. Then we have a phase 3, reflective observation, where students reflect on the tourist trips. And in phase 4, they develop new ideas. The students here learn from the experience. And finally, in phase 5, active experimentation, where students try out what they have learned and for what they were empowered to. Although this contributes to a more systematic, programmatic, theory-based approach to the study of education for sustainable tourism development in middle schools by empowering students through travel, this conceptual model is heavily dependent on institutions, personnel, and in receptive students through research community involvement. So, for its implementation to occur, it is necessary to have at least the following to happen. 1, creation of planning trip. Teachers and students must work together so that the sustainable tourism development awareness and educational problem goes forward and reaches its objectives. They should become engaged and feel empowered. 2, visiting activities. Prior to the trip, the planning team must agree on what activities should be carried out at the destination. Bear in mind that the educational objectives of the trip. 3, receptive community involvement. It is important, if not crucial, that to the success of the educational trip, that the receptive community is open to participate in this experience. They can help students understand the specificities of their culture and why accepting others' culture is important. If they are willing to participate, the establishment of relations will be much easier. 4th, awareness activities. Among other possible activities, students should write stories or even have a diary where to write about their experiences, reflecting about them. These stories must be shared daily with teachers and fellow mates, stimulating the emergence of discussions, because without reflection there is no possible transformation. And 5, and last, post-trip activities. After the educational trip, a workshop should be arranged on sustainable tourism development. Open discussion meetings, quizzes, and other interactive activities that incite to reflection and promote the development of new ideas and perspectives on sustainable tourism development. From what I said, however, 2 questions arise. Do transformational school trips with tourism education for sustainability purposes improve active students' engagement? And do they improve the students' sense on embracing difference? The answer to both is unclear, and further studies must be made in order to fully understand it. In literature, this is still an ongoing work. Webern foresaw a society in which learning-oriented leisure would soon become the dominant form of daily activity. We still aren't there. However, it is our understanding that educational tourism brings us closer to it. Nevertheless, more than 40 years later, it is pertinent to say that societies is far from reaching that reality, and that children and teenagers' perspectives are still very absent in tourism research. Concluding, transformational school trips experiences with sustainability intents are based on encouraging individuals and or group change. This is where educators challenge learners to critically question and assess the integrity of their deeply held assumptions about how they relate to the world around them. So I know that this was boring, but thank you for your patience. Any questions?
Very brief comment. The importance of the way we look at tourism is, as you could see, not so much the economic dimension, which of course is also important, but the fact that tourists, among other humans, are of those who are more exposed to different cultural mindsets. So often tourists are neglected in that respect. They are not understood, and people also make jokes because for example, people separate in the tourism industry the so-called cultural tourism from those who go to the beach and so on, as if it was a completely different thing. It is not, because in fact what a tourist does is a person who decides to take part of his spare time, of course often triggered by alienation, depression, escaping from daily life, it's true, but what this person does is to do an act of courage, which is to go to another place where the comfort of its daily life is broken. When you travel, every single of you, in your own countries, you have a certain number of rights. Even in countries where the rights are not so well protected, but you know the rules, you know the regulations, you are a citizen of that country. If you go as a tourist to somewhere other place, you lose everything. And we occasionally read stories about someone who went to Indonesia and was caught by a tsunami, or went to Turkey and was caught by an earthquake. I'm talking just about these things. When they happen, the tourists are the last ones to have support, because they are not citizens. Often people don't even know they are there. And the tourist knows this. He knows this. And nevertheless, he goes. And even the tourists that go and throw their garbage in the beaches and do things that they would not do at home, even them are learning in the process. And learning the difference of cultures is very important, because something that people talk a lot about, which is the so-called intercultural dialogue. There is no intercultural dialogue. It doesn't exist. Because if you have a dialogue, it's because you have a series of concepts that you share with the other. And the concepts shape the culture. So either you have a dialogue within a culture, could be a civilization culture, so a multicultural culture, or you don't have a dialogue, right? So you can simply talk, and you can think you are having a dialogue. Like people that talk about sustainability and those who talk about durability, and they think they are talking about the same thing, and they are not. So I think the issue of tourism, of education, and in this case particularly with younger people, and it's actually there that the mindset of understanding the complexity of these things can be shaped. If you teach a child to learn more than one language when the child is very small, this child can then learn almost any language, but basically because the child will understand using two languages that they don't have exactly the same concepts, and so the complexity in the mind of the child becomes much more robust. So sorry for taking too long. I don't want to do a second lecture, but just to point this out. So if no one wants to say anything, I welcome my colleague Manuela that will deliver the next lecture. And you will be talking also about Saramago. Yes. I'm the only one who is not so fond of Saramago. And I have this good friend, Marta Azarello, that always puts a quote of Saramago in the end of her emails. Okay, please.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to present Riding Pool with Saramago, Literature and Transmedia Interweavings in Médio Tejo. This is a project about transmedia based on Journey to Portugal of Saramago. This project, a transmedia journey through Médio Tejo heritage with Saramago, emerged in 2021 within IPT's Research and Development Unit TechniArt. It has a prototypical nature and it aims at promoting Médio Tejo's heritage as well as tourism by resorting to José Saramago's point of view. That will be done by creating transmedia scenarios based on Saramago's journey to Journey to Portugal, so as to envelop the users in an immersive environment in which they themselves become co-creators of sense and contents based on the heritage available on the said scenarios. This will be lodged on a digital platform accessible of the public in general, thus contributing to compile feedback that will allow us to attempt to answer the research question. And our research question is, can the perspective of the Nobel Prize in Literature, 1998, José Saramago, contribute to boost the knowledge and appreciation of Médio Tejo's heritage? So, Saramago was born in 1922 and died in 2010, a few years ago. The idea of the book, Journey to Portugal, was born in 1979. José Saramago accepted an invitation from the Lisbon Círculo de Leitores, it's a Portuguese publisher, to write a book based on a journey through various regions of Portugal. The idea was that he would spend a year traveling within his country by car. Saramago left the Portuguese capital in October 1979 and only returned in July 1980 with a huge diary of notes. In 1981, Journey to Portugal was finally published, an account of Saramago's journeys from Trás-os-Montes, from the north, to Trás-os-Montes in northeastern Portugal to Algarve. This project gains relevance due to the celebration of the centennial of Saramago's birth, celebrated last year in 2022. The Transmedia project focuses in particularly on Médio Tejo, since it's our region. You have here the map. The travelers are then invited to roam over Médio Tejo spots, guided by Saramago's subjectivities, drawing them closer to his perception as narrator and traveler himself. Despite the difference that the landscape has endured in the last 40 years, the project proposes an immersive experience within the local culture. Furthermore, while exploring less touristic places as a branch, in a less traveled Portugal, the project wishes to contribute to its affirmation and enhancement while contributing also to further the tourist traveling education. The project couldn't cover all Médio Tejo, so as it's a prototypical nature, the project just does not allow it to cover the whole region. Therefore, we decided just to cover Abrantes as a sample, mainly its churches, as it are the buildings mentioned by Saramago. Transmedia. The concept of transmedia was conceived and first used by Harry Jenkins in an issue of the MIT Technology Review in 2003. From then onwards, it has been expanded and explored by many authors, producers and media projects alike. It thrives on several media platforms. Transmedia is about the convergence of media, the elimination of redundance, its entertainment, profitability, and a new form of storytelling, which results from telling a story using several media types. For instance, the Wachowicz The Matrix trilogy, a paradigmatic example, is told by resorting to 3 action films, a series of animated shorts, 2 collections of comic book stories, and several video games. Moreover, there is no single urtext from which one can gain all the information needed to comprehend the story's universe. In other words, the full story results from connecting several dots present in many media available and that tells pieces of story. It's a detective work. Transmedia storytelling project have been gained momentum since the turn of the millennium, with entertainment at their core. Some have captured the tourism industry interest due to their capacity to enhance the tourist experience at a specific destination by applying a new level of entertainment in which emotionally charged stories and characters transformations expose and inform the audience about local heritage, establishing new points of dialogue between local and visitors. Transmedia storytelling projects with a tourist and literary leaning are a case in point. You have, for instance, 2 examples. Ferrant Fever, a tour of Naples inspired by Elena Ferrante's Napolitan novels, and a transmedia design approach to literary cartography, the case of When da Morte, Ricardo Reis, also by José Saramago. Here you have some examples of transmedia scenarios used in our project. You have photos from Santa Maria do Castelo Church in Abrantes, as well as St. Vincent Church, also in Abrantes. And in the middle you have postcards, and that postcards can be signed and emailed by the user, or can also be printed and posted. This image from that postcard is present a replica of the tiles of the inside of the church, Santa Maria do Castelo Church. No, before. Okay, sorry. Here you have another example of transmedia scenario used in the project. This is an artistic view called Torna Viagem, These are photos related to the return in another time to the same ground from the same place. This is very interesting because this scenario was made by an artist using water-moisted pieces of linen, which were then placed on the church's floor to capture its texture, as you can see. This is an uncharted territory because this area of church can be seen but cannot be stepped over. However, the artist was granted the opportunity to step over Saramago's previous presence, making it available to the public in general through this project. Here you have another example of Transmedia's scenario, a video. It takes only 2 minutes. It's from the Santa Maria do Castelo church. These are examples that we have developed, but there are other examples still to be developed. For instance, extract reading related to the point of the journey in question, old photos and videos, newspaper articles, radio and TV shows, historical information, culture and tourism information. So now the hard part, programming architecture. The technological platform that supports this project is based on the WAMP server, Windows, Linux, Apache, and so on, where a back office is hosted, accessible by the most common browsers in the market, Edge, Chrome, Safari, Firefox. The server provides an API, an application programming interface, through the REST web service, so that several application web for Android or iOS smartphones can present the Transmedia stories that will be built in the back office. This solution is built as a proof of concept. In the back office, stories are built using information in various formats: video, audio, as we have seen, image and text. In the cases of video or audio information, they already have a time component of a beginning and an end. In the case of image and text, this information will have to be given in the construction of the story. The times for the presentation and visualization of text and image are defined by the content manager that synchronized them with the video or the audio. Once the stories are built and parameterized, we can view the story in several formats, and we can change the formats throughout the story. We can start the story with videos, then change to text, and conclude with audio, among other options. We hope to have the prototype ready by August 2023 and be able to share the bigger picture with you. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you very much, Manuela.
Thank you.
Marta. Marta is the fan of Saramago.
Oh, yeah.
always forget about this. Okay, because strangely enough, we are ahead in time for our lunch. 'Cause I don't think there are more conferences this morning, right? No, there are not. So if no one wants to ask anything, we can take a break, and we resume at 2:30. We will have this afternoon a workshop coordinated by Inês Câmara, that is somewhere here. Where is she? Ah! Okay. She is in the far right of the room. I don't know why. And so this we'll do here, and then there will be also a moment organized by Fernando Coimbra on sound and acoustics. So have a nice lunch. For those who are our guests, we will go to a restaurant which is nearby, so we organize ourselves in the exit, but we don't need to go there immediately. Anabela? É bocadinho cedo, mas iríamos já almoçar? É à 1, mas estamos terminados. Não, é quase meio-dia. Estamos 1 hora adiantados. Se calhar íamos e comíamos com mais calma. Maybe we go to the restaurants, those who go, and we eat with more time. Yes. Marta came as a good Italian for the lunch. Okay. See you in a while.